Hello, 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 folks. How are we doing? Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone is having a good day today so far. Hey, Chris. Hey, Arenzi. Hey, Rascal. I hope everyone had a very good weekend and a happy Halloween if that is something that you partake in. We'll get started here in about a minute and 15 seconds. Hey, well, then, welcome. Hey, Tops. Hey, Laylo. Hey, Kizaru. And I just realized that I put the wrong date on my tweet, my announcement tweet for today's stream. I put the wrong date on there. So we'll see how many people we get tonight. Hopefully, folks will see the go live notification. But yep, I did that wrong. Hey, Arwen. Wolven says, I'm sick and my wrist hurts. Oh, so this is my current way to study. Hey, that is perfectly valid. You got to do what you got to do, right? All right. I appreciate you coming here anyway. 5 interviews. Holy cannoli. All right. Hello. Congratulations, Kizaru, on all your interviews. That's awesome. Way to go. I love hearing about all the, you know, networking that folks are doing, all the interviews. Um, yeah, all the conversations people are having. I've been lurking. I haven't really been posting on the Discord, but I've been lurking quite a bit. And so I think I just love seeing all that stuff. So yeah, I hope the hunt is going well for everybody so far. Um, and we are going to continue. Yeah, we're going to continue the sort of the chill vibe that we have been doing here for just a little bit longer. And so, what we're going to do this evening is we're going to do some LeetCode problems, which are slightly less chill than Code Wars. And we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to branch out a little bit. So, we're going to do some JavaScript LeetCode, and then we're also going to do some SQL LeetCode just because I want to. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a SQL dev by day, so that is what I do during the day. And so I haven't really done I haven't really done SQL coding challenges because I mean I do it all day, so like why? But I have been trying a few, and they're actually pretty fun. And so what I want to do is do a few with you all because I feel like I've said this before. I feel like I see SQL quite a bit on job postings as something that they feel is nice for applicants to have. It's one of those. It's like a little extra, right? It's some frosting on top of the cupcake that is your skills. And so I figure if you can handle a simple LeetCode SQL problem, or at least know what it's asking, right? If you understand the concepts, if you understand conceptually how to approach it, then that might get you a few extra points from your interviewer. So we're going to see if we can do a couple SQL LeetCode SQL problems tonight as well. We'll see. We'll see how many we get through. I've pre-selected a few problems, so we're not going to be doing this randomly. I've pre-selected a few problems for both JavaScript and LeetCode. Sorry, JavaScript and SQL. And so yeah, we'll just kind of talk through them and work through them together. And yeah, have a bit of a chill time this evening. And also, obviously, are going to have the long-awaited kitten cam. The kittens are doing great, and so probably after the first break, we'll do our kitten cam. Okay, let me get caught up with chat here. here for the JS LeetCode, but happy to learn some SQL too. Yeah, yeah, SQL is of course optional, but like I said, it can be something that's nice to have. Company laid off 62 of 102 people last week. Oof, ouch. Oh no. At least you've got a lot of other interviews lined up. That's rad. Hey, Zena, welcome. Yeah, I've heard really good things, Kazara. I've heard really good things about SQL Bolt. I personally haven't tried it yet, but that's what I've been recommending to folks because I hear such good things about it. Hey, Inner Planet. Hey, Neko Chats. Rascal says, so no second queue. Hards. Yeah, no. We're not going crazy. Not at all. Chill time with SQL. First time hearing that. I think SQL can be chill. Oh, I got to turn on my captions. Give me just 1 second to do that. Zena says, so you mean I can add SQL to my resume? Absolutely, yes. So that's actually what I did. That's what helped get my foot in the door, to really start getting more technical type jobs was, after my first job where I'd only used SQL in like the barest capacity, hardly even knew what it was. I only knew how to write like the simplest of queries because I had to do it to hook up Excel spreadsheets to a database. Like it was just like do a simple select, and that was it. I didn't know anything else. I put SQL on my resume, and that's what got me my next job. So yes, I know that was a facetious question on, so does this mean I can add SQL to my resume? Yes, it does. Absolutely. If you can answer basic SQL questions, then yeah, but it should be on your resume. Yeah, because I mean that's how I did it. So you should do it too. It worked. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Folks usually trickle in here over time. I need to switch my screen. Hey, hook a girl up, welcome. All right, there we go. Okay. So I might have to zoom in a little bit once we get into the problem, but let's go ahead and start. Let's just kind of do a warm up. We're going to do just the classic one here, the two sum. And this is one that should look familiar. I don't know why, whenever you click on a problem, I don't know why it goes from like dark mode to light mode and like blasts your retinas out of your face. But does anybody know that? Does anybody know if you can switch the code window to dark mode? It's okay. We don't have to right now, but just kind of asking for future. Um, but anyway, this is a real classic, and I feel like everybody should probably know. Sorry, there's something chirping outside. I feel like everybody should probably know how to solve this one, because it's kind of like I said, it's kind of a classic of data structures and algorithms practice. And it's actually one that we saw in the data structures and algorithms course, the front end masters course. And I think it was in the other one too, the Scotch IO course as well. So let's read through it and see if we can figure out how to solve it. Settings icon. Okay, I'll have to change that after the stream. Steven Code Stuff says the code window has a dark mode beta, but only to select random people. Why? Like the selection screen has it has a dark mode, so why not the code window? That's so weird. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll figure it out at some point. It's all right. It's not the end of the world. All right. So let's read through this. Given an array of integers nums and an integer target, return indices of the two numbers such that they add up to target. You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution and you may not use the same element twice. You can return the answer in any order. Okay, so they have some examples down here. So this one here, they give us an array of 4 numbers and a target of 9. And then the result that they expect back is 0 and 1. So they don't expect the numbers that add up to the target. They're looking for the indices of those numbers. Okay. Because num0 plus nums1 equals 9, we return 0, 1. And the same thing for the next one, 3, 2, 4, target 6, output is 1 and 2. Okay, so let's do this properly. Let's prep this out. And all right, so our inputs are, what are our inputs here? What are we expecting to take in to this function? Kizaru says, I remember acting like I've never seen this question during my Apple interview. Absolutely. You have never heard of Code Wars or LeetCode in your life. You have no idea, but you're gonna give it your fair shake, and then you go and you ace it. So yeah, so what are our inputs here? What are our inputs? Now, this is not the kind of thing you're going to do like in a real interview, but I like to write it out when we're kind of just solving these informally. So I guess I should use the prep notation. We're going to say parameters. What are our inputs here? What an interesting, unique question. Yeah. Yeah, Hookah Girl Up says an array of numbers. Yep. So we're taking in an array of integers, right? Yep. Array of integers. And what else are we taking in? So that's not the only thing. Our input is an array of integers, and what else? Yeah, we have a one target integer. So array of integers and a target integer. There we go. Yep. All right, so that was the first P in prep. So the second P in prep stands for results or return. Whoops. Dang, I cannot type. All right, results. All right, so what do they want back? Thinking sounds. More like scent of something burning. Yeah. Capacitors burning out in your brain. Yep. All right, so what do they want back from this problem? They're giving us an array of integers and a target, so what is the specific result that they want you to give them in return? An array, yeah, so the result is going to be an array of 2 values. Exactly. Yeah. Of, let's say, array of 2 integers. Yeah. Hey Elias, welcome. Yeah, so the result is going to be an array of 2 integers, and those integers, array of 2 integers, which identify the indexes of the array values that add up to the target, right? Okay. So continuing through prep, then they gave us some examples. Indices. Yeah, I couldn't spell indices. So you get indexes. Hey Elias, today we're just doing some LeetCodes. We're going to be doing some LeetCode problems in both JavaScript and SQL. So we're going to warm up with a JavaScript problem, and then we're going to do a SQL problem. I imagine we're probably going to kind of alternate between JavaScript and SQL. So some examples they already gave us. So I'm just going to kind of drop these in here too. Input is that, target is that, and then our output is that. Get another one in there as well. And then output. Okay. All right. Now, the last P in prep is probably the most important. And that is pseudocode. I can spell pseudocode, but I can't spell indices. What's the matter with me? All right. So what is a potential way that we could solve this problem? Essentially, we need to somehow go through the array, right? We need to somehow move through the array, but instead of just looking at one element of the array at a time, I heard an alert. What is that? Oh, Scotty, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Scotty. That's so nice of you. Thank you so much. So we need to be moving through this array, right? And yeah, and so instead of just looping through one value at a time, we need to be looking at two values. And so essentially what we want to be doing is taking like the first value. So in this array here, we want to start with the 2. And then we want to look at every other value in the array and see if the sum of 2 and 7 is 9, 2 and 11 is 9, 2 and 15 is 9, and then return the indices of those values. So yeah, absolutely. A way that we could do this is with nested loops, right? Nested for loops. So we start with one, and then if none of these add up to the target, and then we go into the next one and compare. Yeah, so the time complexity, as Brashless says, the time complexity is not the best, but we're going to do this two ways. So first, we are going to do the nested for loop solution. So we'll write that out as our first solution, is nested for loops. So use nested loops to compare each value in the array against all other values to see if they add up to the target, then return the index of each value. Then when they do, return the index of each value of, no, not each, both values. Each, weird grammatical thing here, each is for more than 2, and both should be used for 2. So English nerd. Yeah, exactly. So in an interview setting, right, you might know the better solution. You might know that this is quadratic complexity. This is O n of 2. So we can even say this here. Complexity will be O n of 2, right? It's not the best. We already know the complexity going in. However, in an interview setting, it's likely that your brain is probably not going to be able to perfectly remember the more performant solution. So brute force, I think, is probably easier to remember. So what you can do is in an interview, you can start with the brute force solution, and then you can say, yes, and I know that this is quadratic complexity, and so how I might refine this is, and then we'll do the second solution here in a minute. Piece of Shoot says, this is my first LeetCode. All right, welcome to LeetCode. Yeah. Alex says, I need to dive into your SQL intro video. A lot of jobs near me have that on their applications. Yeah, that's what I've been seeing too, just in general. So, which is why we're going to touch on it tonight. I feel like Leon said he would get to it eventually, but hasn't yet. So I'm just like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. Brute force. Yeah. Elias says, I think this would be easier with Python. Yeah, it might be. I don't know Python, so we're going to do it in JavaScript. You can, once we code out the solution, you can decide for yourself whether you think it's easier or not. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to get rid of the, the function that they gave us because they use the old notation, that var notation, and we're better than that. So we're going to use slightly newer notation. We'll just use regular function notation. We can make it fancy with arrows and all that, but let's do it the classic way for now. Um, and we're taking in two parameters here. We've got an array called nums and our target called target. So those are our parameters. Take those in, and then we're essentially going to have two for loops. So I'm just going to kind of shell those out for now. For and for. We already said that's what we need, right? Um, and so let's go ahead and do the outer loop. Zena says, love me a regular old function declaration block. Yeah, I feel like sometimes those are easier to digest. And especially, I'm thinking like in an interview setting, you could say, you could verbally say, and I could use an arrow function here, but let's use a regular function declaration. I feel like I would be more inclined to screw up an arrow function in an interview than I would just a regular function declaration. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. All right. So for a for loop, I am notorious at screwing up for loops. So make sure I don't. So we're going to start at 0 for our outer loop, right? We're going to start at the beginning of the array. So we want to start it with the first element, let I equal 0. I think I've screwed up a for loop every single time I've done one here on stream. So we'll see if I get it right. All right, nums length. And then I always forget my semicolons, which is weird because I'm a SQL dev. You'd think I'd be better at that. And then I plus plus. All right, so that's our outer loop. And then let's think about, so that's the outer loop, and it's just gonna kind of mark like the starting value, right, for each loop. And then our inner loop should then, what does our inner loop need to do? It needs to, what was the, let's see, the parameters were, so exactly one solution, and you may not use the same element twice. Okay, so our inner loop then cannot start with the first element, right? Because they said we cannot use the same element twice, so we can't use 2 and 2. So where does our I'm going to say this would be J here. We can't call it I, right? So where does our inner loop need to start? Hey, Rask. Hookah Girl Up says, I always get tripped up by nested loops. Yeah, they can be a little bit tricky. But I feel like this specifically, this like nested loop implementation of nested loops, I think is really important to kind of have memorized. Yeah, so we're gonna start J at the second element in the wherever we're at in the array. Wherever we're at in the array, we need J to start one element beyond that. So if we are at 2, we need J to start at 7. If we are at 7, we need J to start at 11, right? Because we cannot repeat. So yeah, our J is going to be equal to I plus 1. Make that look a little better. J is going to be equal to I plus 1. And then J is also, though, going to be constrained by the length of our array, right? It needs to stop at the end. So we can just do that. And then we're going to iterate plus 1 each time. Okay. So does that make sense what we've done here with the outer and the inner, why we're doing this? Does it make sense why we're, obviously there may be more performance solutions out there, but for now we're just brute forcing it. So I hope it makes sense why we're using nested loops here, just in general. Going 1 over with it. I guess we are, aren't we? Let's then, what do you think about that? Yeah, because I guess we're going to kind of go off the end. Would it need to be -1 then? We can test it out. That's all right. We can console log it and we can see what it does. Let's leave it as is, and then we'll console log it, and then we'll see what happens. That's what console log is for, right? Okay. So what are we doing inside the inner loop then? What are we check? So let's remind ourselves, what are we actually checking? So so in my first iteration of the loop here, um, let's see. Well, in this first iteration of the loop, right, what we're doing is we're comparing I starts at 0, we're comparing 2, the inner loop is looking at 7. So what are we needing to do inside the body of our loop here? Yeah, we're checking the sum, right? All right. So we're saying something like nums, whatever number is at I and whatever number is at j. And our condition is we're checking to see if they are equal to our target value, right? And if they are equal to the target value, so I'm going to do classic if here too. We're not going to get crazy with it. If these are equal to the target, then what should happen if they are equal? What do we want to return? What's our return value if they are equal? Specifically, what did we say our result should be from this problem? Yeah, the indices, and they should be in an array. Exactly. So what we want to return is not like nums I, nums j, right? What we want to return is just an array with I and j. So we just want to return the indices. So let's go ahead and let's see if it works. And then what we'll do is we'll add a console log and we'll see what it's actually doing. Okay, let's test it. I think, did I get everything there? I think so. We'll see. Hey, hooray, it works. Cool. All right, and we can do let's do another test case just to be sure. Let's do this one. And you can drop in your own test cases. So on the test case tab, you can just do that, drop in your own test cases. Let's see if this works. Yay. Nice. All right, so it works. Now let's add a console log and see if, or where do I want to do this? I want to do it outside the if. Just console, I just want to see how far it's looping. Console log I and j. So at each loop, I just want to see how far it goes. Let's see. Well, let me console log in here. Yeah, okay. So the first one was 3, 2, 4, 0, 1, 0, 2. Yeah, okay. So so we didn't have any issue with going over or anything like that. No. So yeah, this was fine. We didn't need to do the, length -1. If we did that, actually that would have had us accidentally omit this last result here. So yeah, we were fine without the uh, without changing this particular value at all, because we were just saying, j less than the length, and then so what it did is it went all the way up to the end to the last index here, and that was the last part of the loop. So yeah, we were totally fine. But still, it's good to console log these things and see what they do. No, it's okay, piece of shoot. That's why console logs exist, because it allows us to double check, right? And make sure that we're okay, that we aren't gonna, that we aren't gonna screw something up. So console logs are our friend. Rascal says, imagine if it didn't allow console logs. Well, I mean, really, a lot of the times I do this stuff in VS Code first anyway, and I make sure it works in VS Code, and then I paste it in here. But you're not going to be able to do that in an interview setting, so that's why we're we're doing it blind here, straight in the VS Code window. So yeah, it would have been a silent failure, right? Yeah, and it doesn't. That's right. An array overrun doesn't. At least it doesn't access random memory addresses, right? Is that I've heard that's a I don't really know many languages, and so is that like a problem? I've heard is that like a problem with like C? Um, somebody who knows more than I do, please enlighten me. All right, let's submit this and C. You can. I've heard about that. Yeah, I've heard that C. Yep, 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 yep. Welcome Thors and mess up memory blocks. I've heard that. It's a problem with all languages that have actual arrays. C is one of them. Okay. So does anybody have any questions on this particular implementation? And actually, I'm not going to submit this. We're going to do this the second solution. Like find hidden passwords. Yeah. So any questions on this nested solution and why it works or and what we're doing? And so that what we're going to do next is then refactor this so that we can have a more performant solution and be a code weenie and think about some of the things that we learned in the data structures and algorithms course to see if we can modify this to not have nested loops and still do the same thing. Yeah, so I mean, we could if it was ordered, we could we could approach it differently. We could go, from one end to the other and toward the middle. Um, well, oh, LeetCode is the code weenie here. What is it? Does it say that? Oh, I was zoomed in. I didn't see it. Follow up. Okay. Well, we will accept the challenge, I think. Can you come up with an algorithm that is less than that is less than quadratic time complexity? I think we can because we are weenies ourselves. All right. I'm going to minimize that for now. So I'm going to get rid of this. It's garbage now. It's garbage, darling. It's garbage. Okay. So let's do another pseudocode here. Pseudocode. So from the data structures and algorithms course that we did recently, the front end master's course, which I'm sure everybody here has completed, I had a stream on it. So, you know, hint, hint, you can always watch that. If you don't want to watch the whole course, which I highly suggest, it was actually a really good course. I watched it at like 1.8 speed or something like that, and I got through it pretty quick. So you can too. Copy the first. Okay, I'll copy it. All right, I've got a notepad window on my other screen. There we go. It is preserved. No worries, noobish. Okay. Now let's get rid of that. So from the front end master's course, this was actually talked about. So the instructor actually talked about ways that you can ways that you can get rid of nested loop type situations and make your code more less time complex. So have less time complexity. So what were some of the ways that she talked about to do that? Does anybody remember? Yes, and Folkman's ahead of the game there. Absolutely. Yes, so we can do something called caching. Exactly. Now, can anybody define what do we mean when we say we're going to do caching with this solution? What does that mean just in general? You don't got to be specific. What does it mean? Pseudocode type description of what does caching mean when we talk about using it in code. You're okay, Gormasaurus. We really just started. We only did one solution so far, and now we're refactoring it because we're cool people. We're refactoring that solution to be more performant, less time complex. Yeah, so caching in general is just storing the data, right? Storing the data so that it can be used again later. Exactly. Storing intermediate results, right? Exactly. Yep. And so the instructor in the course, described the specific method that we're going to use here of storing this data as memoization. So we're writing it down so we can use it later. But I always think of caching like as, how squirrels right? Squirrels, in the fall, they gather up all the acorns and all the walnuts and everything, and they store them in tree trunks and stuff like that. And what they're doing is they're making a cache. They're caching those acorns for the winter so they can retrieve them later. And so that's what we are going to do with this problem here. And so they don't have to spend as much time during the winter digging around under the snow for acorns. So the squirrels themselves are reducing the time complexity of their lives by caching their acorns in one place so they are easily retrievable. Squirrels are smarter than you thought. Okay. So for memoization, the first thing that we generally need to do is set up some kind of place to store our information. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up an object, num num object, and then it's just going to be an empty object for now because we're going to be putting stuff into it. So we are still going to need to loop through the array. But the whole point here is to reduce the time complexity so that we don't have two nested loops. So it's not it's still going to have a level of complexity, but it doesn't have to be quadratic complex. Wolfen has a good point. They only remember like 3 out of 1,000 acorn locations. Yeah, it's not a perfect system. They aren't, they don't have access to computers yet. So got to cut them some slack. All right, so we are still going to need a for loop. But essentially all we need to do here is just, that was a good call on copying that because I'm just going to copy and paste the for loop syntax. I don't want to type it out again. I really should, but I'm not going to. All right. All right, so inside of our for loop, now let's think about what we're doing. So the question was from Neon, how are you going to memorize anything when the check is only the sum of two numbers? Well, let's think about it this way. As we are looping through this array, the values that we do have, if we're only looping through it once, we're only looking at one value at a time, the values that we do have are the value that we're currently on, right? The value that we're currently on in the array, and the other variable, the other value that we have access to is the target value that we're trying to find, or the target value that we're trying to sum to, right? We have the value that we're currently on. We have the value that we're trying to sum to. And so the only missing element is the other value that we need in order to get there. So what we're going to do is essentially we are going to take our target, subtract the value that we're currently on, and store that. And then all we need to do is find where that other value is located in the array, grab that index, and return it. Yeah. So yeah, essentially, piece of shoot. What we're going to do is we're gonna essentially say, let's see, let's call it something descriptive here. We're going to say let other num let other num equal target minus whatever value we're currently on. So nums, yeah, it's nums minus nums I. So that is going to be the value that we're going to store. So we're going to use the current value as the key in our object, and then the target as the value, or not the other num as the value. All right. And then we're going to say if that let's see how to describe this. So essentially, if we locate, as we're looping through this array, if we locate that other num in our object, all we need to do is return the indices of that value at its location. Looks like Brash has probably described it better than I did. You will visit each item in the list once in a loop, and at each value, you determine what the other value you need to find is, and you can check if you already visited that value. Yes, there you go. That's better. All right. So if num object, so we're going to essentially look inside of num object, and we're going to look for the other num. Because that's what we're going to be storing. So we're going to look in other num, and we'll console log this so you can visually see it. It'll be easy. It's easier to visually see it than me just trying to talk about it. So, and we're going to check and see if that exists. So if it's not undefined, if it is real, if it's not undefined, parentheses here. If it exists, then essentially we're just going to return. We're going to return. Let's think about what we need to return here. We need to return the current index that we're on, and we need to return the index value of the other number. So it'll be an array containing num, other num, and num object, other num. Num object, other num. And the index value that we're currently on, so I. Okay. And then let's see. That should be good. And then if it's not the right result, so this is essentially if we hit the jackpot here, we return this result, but if not, then we need to keep adding to our dictionary of values. So as we're looping through this, we want to keep writing to our num object with each value. And so num object, what we're going to be writing to that is nums I, and that will equal I. Okay, so essentially what we're doing here is we're in each loop, we're taking where we currently are in the array, grabbing the index value, and using the key as the value of the array we're currently on. So for example, the first one here is going to be, the first thing that's going to be written to our object is going to be 2 at an index of 0. So 2, 0. And the next one is going to be 7, 1, and 11, 2, etc., etc. Yeah, it'll make more sense seeing it in action. Absolutely. I have so much trouble like explaining this, but what we're going to do, actually, what we're going to do is I'm going to add a console log in here, and I'm going to, we'll console log the object as we go so that you can see what's being written, what's being written to it, and then what we're returning in the end. So I'm going to do num object. Oh, and I started typing this wrong too. That's not going to return. Num object, and what I want to do is console log num object and the other num value. So for each loop, I'm just going to log the whole object so we can see it, and the value that we're looking for. Okay, let's try it, and we'll see what we get. There's a very reasonable chance that I've gotten this wrong, so we'll see what we get. Okay. Oh, whoops. I think I was calling it num. Okay, try that again. Okay, so correct output. Now let's see what the heck is happening here. All right. So input was 3, 2, 4, and looking for 6. Actually, I'm going to do, let's do a different test case. Let's do this test case instead. Let's do a longer one. That'll be easier to see. All right, this one, and a target is going to be 9. All right, run it again. Okay, cool. Oops. I see. Okay. Well, that didn't work because that's the first one in there. Hang on. Let's do a better one. Do it this way. I'm going to put the 2 and the 7 at the end. So it has to do more loops. All right. Here. Okay, perfect. So on the first loop, let's walk through what's happening. So num object is empty, and we start at the beginning of our array, which is 11. And the first thing we do is calculate our other num. So we're looking for 9, and we subtract the first value in the array, which is 11, and we end up with -2. So that's the console log here. We have an empty storage object and the value that we're potentially looking for. Whoop. Hey, Sam KitKat, thank you so much. I appreciate the raid. Thank you, Sam. Hey, welcome, welcome. Thank you, Sam. We are doing the very classic LeetCode problem, two sums, and we're attempting to refactor it using memoization and trying to make it more performant. We did the classic double loop solution first, and we are refactoring it to use intermediate storage so that we only have to do one loop instead of two. We love double loops. I do too. Honestly, Sam, I do too. But we're being code weenies today and seeing if we can make this better. So we're just walking through the loop now and just kind of verbalizing what's happening. So we know the solution works, but why does it work, right? So first loop, we have our empty object. And we have the number that we are looking for. So the other num is the number that we are looking for to complement our first number. So our first number is 11. Our target is 9. And so in this case, our other number is -2. Now we know it's never going to find it. So that's not going to give us a result, but it's still going to go through the rest here. So what we do is we check inside of our num object to see if that value exists. Is -2 is -2 in there? No, it's not. So we simply add it to our dictionary. And so what did we add to our dictionary? Well, what we added to our dictionary was the value at that index we were at and the index value. Because remember, what this problem wants back is the index value of the solution, not the value itself. It just wants the index value. It doesn't want the number itself. It wants its index, its location. All right, so we've added that first value in the array to our dictionary here, to our memo. And now in the second loop, we enter that loop with num object having 11 and 0 in it. So let's see what happens. We are now at index 1. Yeah, so we did the first iteration when our object was empty, right? And now we're at index 1 in our array. So index 1 in our array is 15. And this time we're going into it with this value, 11, 0, key value pair, inside of our intermediate storage. So now other num is target minus nums I, so it's going to be 9 minus 15, which is -6. And so we can see that's what's being console logged here. And now we look inside of our object. We look inside of num object and see inside of num object, is there a key? Inside of num object, is there a key that's -6? No, there isn't. So what do? We skip this if right here. It doesn't meet the criteria. We skip it and we just go ahead and write the next value in the array with its index to our intermediate storage, and we return to the beginning of the loop. Okay. So now entering the loop again, we have 2 items in our storage now, 11 and 0 and 15 and 1. Okay, going around the horn again. Target minus nums I is going to be 9 minus 2, right? Target minus the value at the index we're currently at is going to be 9 minus 2 is 7. And if we console log that, we can see that. So we're console logging our whole intermediate storage here and the value. And now we're checking again. We're saying, all right, does 7 exist as a key in our intermediate storage? No, it does not. Okay, so we skip the return and we go straight down to writing a value into our object. Num object, nums I, is going to write 2, the key value pair of 2, and the index it's currently at, which is 0, 1, 2. So it's going to be writing 2 and 2 to our intermediate storage. And so now we resume the loop one more time and enter back into it. So now entering this loop, our num object has the following key value pairs: 2 and 2, 11 and 0, and 15 and 1. Remember, these are index values here in the values, and our keys are the actual numbers at that point in the array. All right, so one last time. Our target is 9, so 9 minus 7 is 2, which we console log here. Now we look inside of our num object, trying to see if there is a value inside of our num object. Is there a key inside of num object with a value of 2? Ah, yes, there is. It's not undefined. Okay. So what we want to return then, so well, it's not undefined, right? So we meet the if criteria. So now we go into the return statement. What do we want to return? Well, the one thing we want to return is the index we're currently at, which makes sense. But what is this other thing that we're returning? Well, we go into num object and we find the value that matches the other number we're looking for. So 2. So in the case of this, our output is going to be 2, 3, because we stopped the loop at index 3. So that's the I. And we found a match for the complementing value inside of our intermediate storage at index 2. Yeah, exactly, piece of shoot. You're exactly right. So for the first iteration, we'll have 11, 0. Yep. And essentially, we are just logging each value and its index. We just keep going until we find a matching complementary value and we return its index. Okay, so does that make sense at all, what we did there? There's a lot to this. And it's kind of wild if this is the first time you're seeing this, it's probably kind of wild. Yeah, the value in the object is the index that it's located in. And so if we look at this array, we can see in this array that we are inside of our input array, 11 was at index 0, right? 11 was at index 0, 15 was at index 1, 2 was at index 2, and then we stopped, at index 3, and so that was the I that was returned here. That was the I that was returned. Yeah, and we can do it with longer arrays too. So we can do a longer test case. Let me think of something. All right, I'm just going to drop some random numbers in here. 5, 6, and let's do 5 and 8. We'll do a slightly longer one here. I need to make sure that mental math, make sure that these things don't add up to each other. Because there should only be one solution. So if I say 13, will that work? I think that will work. Because yeah, the only things that add up to 13 are 5 and 8 in this scenario. So let's run it again here. Oh, okay. I can't math. Y'all should know this by now. Oh yeah, 11 and 2. I'm a dingus. All right, let's replace that with a 1. I can't math, y'all. All right, good. Yes. So this gives us a longer loop and it gives us more to look at. So let's just kind of look at this again. I'm not gonna walk through every loop again. Um, but we can see here how each time we loop around, it's checking. What it's doing is it's taking the value at the index we're currently at, subtracting it from the target, and then looking inside of our storage object to see if there is a matching key. That's all it's doing. So at each point, it's saying, all right, inside of our storage object, is there a 12? Oops, come on. Is there a 6? Is there an 8? Is there a 5? Because that is the other value that we are looking for at that point in the array. And if there is a 5, for example, in this last loop, if there is a 5, then we want to return the index of that other value. So we return the index where we currently are in the loop. And the other thing that the problem is asking us to return is the index of the other value, which we've already logged and stored inside of our memo object. Yeah. So I think, let's see. I guess it doesn't say, oh yeah, it does. So it does say that, so there's a possibility that they could be the same. So let's try it. Let's see what happens if we have two of the same values. I think we should be okay, but let's try this test case. Now, can you kind of see why this is not necessarily something that you would want to try to code out in an interview? Like, I mean, you can know that this exists and that's great. Like, you can know, like, yeah, this is a fancy thing that I could do. But personally, I wouldn't want to do this in an interview. Like this particular solution, I would just be like, nope, I know how to do nested loops. I'm going to do that. And then what you do is you tell the interviewer that you know of a better way. Yeah, and it still works. Yeah, because what it does in this case, since we have identical values, is that it loops through the first one, right? It loops successfully through the first one because we start out with an empty object, and so this if condition does not get triggered. It just writes that object straight to our dictionary. So the first time that it just writes that value straight to our dictionary. The first loop, our num object is empty. There's nothing to compare to, so it writes it straight there. However, on the second loop, we start out with the 3 written at index 0, and we are now at index 1, and so we compare 3 to 3, and so we return 0 and 1. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, this is cool to do and to try and to play around with. But I personally wouldn't do it in an interview. I would do a nested loop solution because those are easier and they're more intuitive. And then I would say, haha. But if I didn't want to make this quadratic, if you could say something like, and so here's my working solution. You use this nested loops. However, I'm aware that the complexity of this solution is quadratic, or O of n squared. And so if I wanted to make this more performant as far as time complexity, I could use memoization and some sort of intermediate storage object to store the previous values and then reference back to those values at a later point via a single loop. And so, yeah, you could be fancy like that and just kind of describe it. Yeah, and it's similar to the nested loop where one value run doesn't get counted. Yeah, the first value run here, it's trying to read against an empty object, so it just writes it straight there and goes on to the next loop. Stephen Code Stuff says, do companies really accept O of n squared for a 2 sum? So we've kind of talked about this before. The point in interviews, the point isn't necessarily that you can solve the problem using the most complex solution possible. The point of these technical challenges in interviews is to try to gauge how do you approach problems in the first place? Do you approach problems in a logical and methodical way? Are you listening to the requirements? Can you restate those requirements back to the interviewer? While you're working on the problem, can you describe what you're doing? Do you show an understanding of the concepts? Even if you aren't able to get the right answer, can you show an understanding of saying, like, yes, I'm talking through this with you. I'm having a back and forth with the interviewer. I'm asking good questions, logical questions. I'm listening. And so the point is to not always be able to do the most complex solution. The interviewer is actually looking for your soft skills when they're asking you these questions. you know, obviously getting the right answer is great. But what they're actually saying is this person going to be a good fit for our team? Are they going to be able to understand problems, show their skills, teach others their skills, talk it out with others. And so it's not necessarily about knowing the most complex solution off the top of your head, although and in the end, sometimes it's just getting the right answer, right? And so personally, I would brute force this with the nested loops, but then I would just like describe everything I was doing and establish a good rapport with the interviewer. This process is great when you don't when you don't have X amount of problems in Y amount of time. Yeah, it's all about adapting your approach to the interview as well, right? You don't always want to go into the interview with the same, I'm going to do this, and nothing's going to sway me. So if you're given a time limit, then you're going to want to go fast. What is an Nubish says? What is another way to say I don't know or I don't know how? So yeah, you're going to inevitably have times when you aren't going to fully understand what's being asked of you. Um, but what you can do there is you can ask good clarifying questions. So you can use the prep method, so you can restate what you think the interviewer said. So here's what I hear you saying. You can make sure that you're describing the parameters, literally going through them, saying, all right, this is what I think is going in, this is what I think should come out. And you could give some examples of how you might approach it, and then just give it a crack, right? Do what you do know. Write down what you do know, and then you might not get the right answer, but as long as you're talking, you're explaining your process, you're saying, like, here's how I would approach it. Here's the general sense of how I think this problem can be accomplished. So even if you don't solve it, you've gotten points in the bonus category for saying, like, yes, I do know what's going on. I'm not a I'm not completely clueless. I know what's going on. I have an idea of how to solve it. I just can't solve it right here in this moment. And what Leon has suggested in the past is that you take the question home and then send the correct answer in to your interviewer later. So you talk it out in the interview, and then maybe you just email the interviewer later with the right answer. Yep, and you want to spend time on that back and forth with the interviewer. So really talking it out, saying, like, here's how I might approach it conceptually, talking about it in general terms, saying that so showing that you understand the concepts, because on the job you're going to be googling stuff all day long anyway. So if as long as you understand, the why of doing it, the interviewer is probably going to take a pretty positive view to that. Piece of shoot has a really good point there, and I wanted to read it out. They say, um, when I conducted interviews, what I was looking for is, for a candidate I wouldn't mind to get a beer outside of work. You can always train someone to perform a job. It's a bit harder to train him to be a decent human being. Yeah. Like I said, I said, I say this a lot because people get caught up so much in solving the problem. But what the interviewer is looking for is, are you going to be a good fit for their team with your soft skills, with your behavioral skills? Um, are you going to be, you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you're a total butt, or unable to communicate with others, then you're not going to be a good asset to the team. So Rascal says, if it's a bit of logic that's not being communicated for some reason, I like crafting examples that the interviewer response will answer what I was confused on. Yeah. So, and again, that's why we have the R in prep, right? Results and examples. So that's why these two exist. That's why these two parts of prep exist, because you can have the interviewer give you a bunch of examples of what they want back, and then you can say, all right, so if I have input this, then you're expecting that input this is going to come back, but what if input is this? Then would you expect, I'm hearing you say you would expect this back. And so to make sure that you're getting the gist of all the logic that's involved with the problem. Don't be a butt. Yeah. So we're gonna go on break, and when we come back from break, we're gonna have kitten time. I'm gonna so because I owe three separate people have redeemed kitten cams, which is one of my channel points. Look it up. I foster kittens, and so they 3 people have redeemed kitten cams. So we are going to do a kitten cam right after the break. Um, and one of 3, we're gonna do 3 kitten cams, 3 separate kitten cams on 3 separate streams because you all deserve it. Um, exactly. And so, but real quick story time before we go on break. So, at a previous employer, what I was saying about, you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you aren't able to work with people, then it's not going to get you very far. So, I had a coworker like that. They were incredibly smart, like just holy cannoli, like genius level. They could identify things just by like looking. They would look at the problem, and they could, for example, they would look at like a color, and they could tell you the hex value, like just by looking at the color, and they would be right. And they could tell you, they had like memorized the color wheel. They could tell you, values of every. They were just like a robot genius, as far as those things go. But they did not have good people skills. They couldn't. They were often condescending and didn't relate well to others. You could tell that they wanted to, but they just didn't. They weren't good at it. They just didn't have that skill, and so they really weren't able to interact meaningfully with coworkers because they just didn't work well, and so their teams never stuck around. It just didn't work out, but they were so smart, and so eventually they actually left the company, just because they just couldn't function well in a work environment. And so it didn't matter how much they knew. What mattered was that they couldn't relate to others. Yeah. Sounds like that one uncle everyone has. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and so sometimes you get that in a university setting when people focus on academics all day, right? And they think all they need is academics, and they just completely neglect any sort of social skills. Um, and what I find is that people often get farther. People without a university degree can often get farther with just being able to talk to people and being able to work with people and being able to learn from others. Um, and I think that they have a better time of it in the end. There's exceptions to every rule, right? But in the end, I feel like the people that have those soft skills and that can at least deploy those soft skills when they need to, they end up going farther in the workplace than those that don't or can't. And so I say, deploy those soft skills when they need to. For some folks, they may be, neurodivergent, and maybe things don't, social skills don't come easily. And so it is something that can be practiced, it can be rehearsed, it can be learned. The rules of interaction can be learned, just like playing an instrument, right? You can practice that. Um, and so it is something that you can work to improve. And so I would say, if that is something that you struggle with, it's worth practicing. Arrogance is such a huge turnoff, indeed. Genius kids, Malcolm Gladwell addressed this. Genius kids who end up not succeeding in life because they don't know how to play well with others. Yeah. And I mean, I used to be kind of that way. I had never had to have really good social skills because I was always just kind of, I don't know, I just, people, I was just kind of there, right? And so people liked me, adults liked me because I didn't really, I wasn't ever acting out or being naughty, or anything like that. And so I was just kind of a doormat, and I coasted through life that way for a long time. And then I realized once I got into the workplace and people started taking advantage of that, just sort of always going along with everything, then I realized that that was a mistake. And so it's something that you can work to change over time. Well, my first job in tech to be all about having open discussions about the code with the team. Yeah, and you'll find that a lot in. I think you'll find that a lot in modern environments. There's a lot of open discussion. You've got agile type environments where you're doing daily stand-ups and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, and now I speak up. I regularly speak up if something isn't going well at work, or if I disagree with something, I'll say so. Sometimes I'm the only one speaking up. but I think it's valuable to do, and it causes real change. Um, piece of Jesus. I was arrogant. It was one of my biggest weaknesses, but I fixed it, and now I'm perfect. Yeah. Hopefully they see my Ty says, hopefully they see my social skills and lead ability in my um, first interview coming up instead of what I don't know. I'm sure they will. If you are able to answer, so if you've been studying the banking and you're able to answer those behavioral questions, if you can confidently answer those behavioral questions, that'll get you so far. If you can seem comfortable and confident and open and approachable to your interviewer, that will help so much. Does what language you use, such as JS, matter for coding interviews? Well, it depends on what position you're interviewing for. Are you interviewing for a JavaScript position? Then you're probably going to need to use JavaScript. If you're interviewing for a SQL position, then you use SQL. It just it just depends on what you're interviewing for. Yeah, well, then that's a good point. Sometimes parents instill in us all the wrong things. Michael PC Gamer says it's tricky to answer most standard behavioral questions when you haven't had a real job yet. Aha, Michael, I would highly suggest checking out some of my past streams. We spend hours working through those behavioral questions and approaching it from all different angles to help you translate your past experiences into valid answers for those questions. So you don't have to have had previous job experience to answer those questions in a meaningful way. So I would highly suggest checking out some of those previous streams where I talk where they'll usually have Banky in the subject line of those previous streams. We spend hours on those types of questions. I think I've probably done at least like 12 hours of review total over several streams on just behavioral questions alone. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. 5 minutes. When we come back, we'll do kitten time. I'll introduce you to one of the kittens. I think I know which one I'm going to pick this time. You'll get to see all three, but I think I know which one I want to do this time. We'll do kitten time, and then we're going to switch over and do a SQL question. We'll do a SQL LeetCode problem. It's going to be a very simple one, just an intro to SQL to kind of get you some of the basic concepts, some of the things you can do, and then yeah, and then we'll probably go back to JavaScript and we'll do another SQL and blah blah blah. Yeah. Hey, Michael, that is perfectly valid. You got to do what you got to do, right? Didn't realize there's SQL LeetCodes. There absolutely are. There's a ton of them, actually. I was surprised how many there are. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. 5 minute timer. I will see you all back here in 5 for kitten time. So stay tuned. Please stick around because you get to see a cute kitten. All right. See you back here shortly. All right, folks, we got about a minute left in the break. Come on back, come on back. I've got a little friend here who very much wants to say hello to all of you. She's right here with me and purring super loud. So she wants to say hello. I hope you can hear some purrs. I'll do my best. The noise canceling is actually so good that it usually cancels out the purrs, but we'll see. We have too much technology, yes. All right, I'm going to stop the timer. And we're going to go to the chatting screen here so you all can see clearly. Okay. You heard it good. I put her right up against the mic. Oh, let go, sweetheart. Thank you. There we go. Oh, yes. I know it's okay. It's okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep, she's a little torty. Rar and small, yes. Absolutely. She is a cute little tortie. She's very attached to me, as you can tell. She's shoving herself up against me. It's okay, darling. Say hello. There we go. Yeah, good girl. Yep, she's a little squeaker. Here, let's turn. Can you turn this way? There we go. There we go. Yeah, she's got a little sad face, but she's a very sweet little girl. Yep, she is one of three, and they are all three torties. Um, Need dev jobs so I can foster mini kittens. Yeah, yeah. You don't need very much to become a foster. Generally, the shelter or rescue organization will give you most of the things that you need, including the kittens, but things like food and you know feeding supplies and stuff like that. My city, it's yeah, absolutely. Same with mine, Madeline. Um, Oh, her age. Yeah. So she is big. She is very big for her age. She's like at the top of the weight chart. Um, but she is only 4-ish weeks old. So she isn't even on solid food yet. Um, I'm still feeding, amazingly, as big as she is. I'm still bottle feeding her. Look at how big she is. Look at the chunk. She's so big, such a big girl. But no, she's still being bottle fed along with her sisters. And they're just big chunks. They're like, and they have heft too. They're heavy. She's like you know how when you lift up a potato, it's like solid. And yeah, she's solid like a potato. Um, she is. Yeah. And so yeah, she's doing really great. She and all of her sisters. We're just starting to introduce some wet food to them, which is always a treat. But that's always the most exciting part for me because that means that I don't have to get up in the middle of the night to feed them once they can eat on their own. So that's always my favorite part when I don't have to get up, when I don't have to lose sleep anymore, um, and to get up and feed them. Yeah, I know you're snuggle buns, aren't you? You're such a snuggle girl. There we go. Yeah, say hi. Oh, I know. Yeah. Good girl. Yep. So again, this is a foster kitten. So I'm not going to be keeping this kitten. This kitten will go back to the shelter. This is something I've been doing for a few years now, and it's incredibly rewarding. I would highly recommend it. Where are you going? Huh? Where are you going? Hello. I would highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Okay. I guess we're here now. Um, and yeah, so I always advertise fostering and foster kittens to anybody that will listen because it's a tremendously rewarding activity and a lot of fun. And I do plan, so Chris, to answer your question, I do actually plan on doing a dedicated stream to just talk about fostering. kind of like a general introduction to being a kitten foster. Um, and sort of doing an AMA, talking about the good things, the bad things, really anything that people want to know or have been afraid to ask about fostering, is something that I do want to answer on a dedicated stream at some point, um, to hopefully bring more people into it. And also, while we're here, I did want to give yet another shout out to great friend of the stream, Madeline of Trivia. I saw they were here tonight. So they have been massively helpful in various ways, leveraging their employer to help out various foster organizations, animal shelters, that kind of thing. They work for an employer that donates money and does that sort of thing. And they're an instrumental part of that. So please do visit their website where they do their own art. And their website is consideratcat.com. So I wanted to give them another shout out because they are a pretty incredible human being. You can't really see that. There we go. Consideratcat.com. They have wonderful art. They do card decks, tarot decks, and various other products as well. So definitely check them out. Okay. Sweetheart, you doing good now? Yeah. All right. So unfortunately, we're probably going to have to get back to code and stuff. But I hope you all enjoyed this kitten cam. And like I say, there's two more to go. I have two more kittens, and two other people have redeemed kitten cams. So you are going to get to see all three babies. And I have another channel point reward. If you look at my channel point rewards, you will see that another reward is to actually name these kiddos. So if anybody would like to claim that, you can name one of these little nuggets yourself, whatever you would like, as long as it's appropriate. Yeah. Yeah. These kiddos are little cuddle monsters. They really are. All right. I'm going to put her back now. And then when I come back, we're going to do a sequel challenge. So we're going to get back to the LeetCode and we are going to do a very easy, brief sequel challenge, and kind of talk through some of the basics of that. All right. Give me just one moment to put her back and I will see you shortly. All right. We are back. And I'm going back to LeetCode here. I'm going to queue up the next problem that we're going to work on. It is, okay. All right. Madeline says, I still need 10,000 points to buy a name, saving up. Yeah, absolutely. Insert into. All right. So the sequel problem that we're going to be doing, if you are following along, is 1757 recyclable and low fat products. This is an easy sequel problem, and so you can just search for the number directly and you can pull it up that way, or you can click on the helpful link that Rascal provided. All right, so let's see what this one is asking. Now, you may have never written SQL before in your life, and that is perfectly fine. We are going to talk through it as we go and kind of describe what we need in order to solve this problem. So let's approach it the kind of the way that we've done with other problems as well. It's really no different. I mean, thinking through it in a logical way. So we are being given a table. Now, in SQL, or in relational databases, data is stored in tables, and you can just think of them as sort of like giant Excel spreadsheets. So they have rows and they have columns, and the columns can contain different types of data, and the rows contain the data values themselves. All right, so we have a table with products in it. We have a product ID key. So product ID is a unique identifier for this table. We already know the word key, right? When we think about objects, we know what a key is. A key is a unique identifier for a value in that table, and keys work the same way with SQL in relational databases as well. And then we have another column called low fats, and low fats can be either yes or no. So it's saying yes, this product is low fat, no means it's not. And then we have another column called recyclable. And that one can also be yes or no, and really only those two values. It can't be anything else. Zena says, leave your grid and flexbox at home for these tables. Yeah, we're going pure ASCII here, baby. Yeah. And so the question is, write a SQL query, write and SQL? What? Grammar. All right, write a SQL query to find the IDs of products that are both low fat and recyclable. Return the table result in any order. Okay? And here they give us some examples. So here is the input. This is actually what we're going to be querying from, is this table right here. We can see it has 3 columns, and these are the 3 columns that they described here: product ID, low fats, and recyclable. So this is showing them in actual table format: product ID, low fats, and recyclable. And we can see, like they said, product ID is a key, so it's a unique value. We are never going to have any repeats. And then the low fat and recyclable flags can be set differently for each one. So this is our input and what we're going to be querying against. Our output should only be the products that are both low fat and recyclable. So in this case, the answer is 1 and 3, because these values both have yes in the low fats and recyclable column. Willing to bet the author pronounce it SQL. Yes, that's true. That's right. Yeah, if they pronounce it SQL, then this pronunciation, if you're saying it out loud, would technically be correct. Write an SQL query. Aha, good eye. Because yeah, I say SQL, so that ain't gonna work. But interesting. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense what we're trying to get to here. We just want the product IDs that have Y flags in both of these columns. Now, how the flip do we get there? Well, we write a query for it. So in SQL, there's some basic sort of query syntax that we can follow. So queries, when we say query, essentially the word query means that we are asking, so literally the word query means question. And so we are asking the database a question. We're saying, hey, database, can you go get me some stuff? And then you tell the database what stuff you want it to get. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so SQL queries generally follow a standard kind of a format. So essentially in a SQL query, you just say select, and then you would say, this is where you would say what you want to select. So we're going to, just for now, we're going to fill in, select stuff. And then you say where you want to get that stuff from. So select stuff from table. Okay, select stuff from table. Another thing that you can do in queries, and what you will often do, is you don't want everything from the table, right? You want this stuff narrowed down to meet certain criteria. And so you can specify those criteria by using a where clause. So you're saying select some stuff from a specific table where it meets certain criteria. Okay. So that's going to be the general format of our query. And so we can fill in each of these items. But let's kind of prep this a little bit so we can figure out exactly how to build this query. So our parameters, I guess I got to do it. I got to write my comments in SQL syntax. So I think in MySQL, what is the comment syntax? I know what it is in Oracle. What's the comment syntax in MySQL? Because I use Oracle at work, Oracle SQL, which is slightly different. So is it dash dash? Will that work? Same as Oracle? Okay. Oh, I guess yeah. Okay. I could look at the comment that's like right up at the top of the window that I'm in. Yeah. Or I could be hard. I could make it harder on myself. Sometimes I just choose to make it hard on myself. All right, so parameters. Yeah. So in Oracle it's dash dash, and this I guess it's hashtag pound sign, whatever. Um, I don't know. This is I've never like I said, I don't use MySQL, so I'm just gonna go with the pound sign. All right, so parameters in this case, our parameters, what's going into our query, is going to be. I'm gonna help. I'm not gonna ask you to fill this out. I'm gonna help us fill this out. So our input is going to be a table of 3 columns. Primary key is product ID with unique values. There are low, fat, and recyclable columns, which both contain Y and flags. Okay. So our return then needs to be a table of, remember, they want our output to be a table of just one column containing the unique IDs with both low, fat, and I don't want to have to spell recyclable again, recyclable values of yes. Okay, and they've given us an example here. I don't necessarily want to copy and paste it into this because that would take up a lot of space. So examples were given. And for this one, let's think about pseudocode. As far as pseudocode goes, I mean, SQL is already kind of plain English, but I'll do my best. Select product ID values where low fats is yes and recyclable is yes. Now what you'll find is when we actually build our SQL query, it will look very similar to the pseudocode that I just wrote. There'll be more capitalization, but it's going to look very similar to this. So you'll see what I mean in a second. All right. So I think that takes care of the prep part. Now, if you know the answer to this, please don't spoil it. We're gonna build this out together. So, hey, hello MTC. Sorry I didn't see you pop in. Hey KRV. Glad to be in a real software stream. Yeah, rad. Good to have you. For those of you that I see a couple new people in here, so yeah, I am a SQL dev. But we're kind of doing a little introduction to SQL here for folks that may have never used it before, but might get asked a SQL question in an interview. So we're going to be doing some very basic SQL questions, and to kind of give people a taste of the magic, the wonder, the mystery that is SQL. Is this like an iterative loop in SQL? We actually don't need one. So SQL itself, the way SQL works is you don't have to loop through the data. It will read the data that you tell it to. So SQL is declarative. I mean, you don't have to say, hey, SQL, do a loop, unless you want to. You can. There's times when you need to declare a loop in SQL, but by default, if you're just reading from a table, SQL will read from that table. It will read all the rows in that table, and it will return exactly what you ask. So that's what SQL is built for this. It's not like something you have to tell it what to do. It's SQL already, like, that's the built-in purpose of SQL, is to read database tables and return certain values. So what do we want to select? Well, okay, let's do this first. Where are we selecting from? So you guys can probably answer this. Where are we getting the data from? What is our table? If we just, by reading the problem, can you tell me what should be after my from statement here? What am I selecting from? What's my table? Products. Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's where I'm getting stuff from. Yep, the table is called products, and so all SQL needs is just the table name, and then it will know to look at that table and bring back what you want. It's going to go fetch. As long as it knows where to look, it's going to look there. All right. So let's think about what we want back. Now, whatever I put in this select statement, is going to be returned in the return statement as a column. So what you're going to get back here once we do this select is we're going to get back essentially what's going to look like a new table with only the information that we told SQL to go get. So what we're gonna get back is a sort of a very heavily modified version of the input table with only the stuff that we asked for. So what are we asking for here? What do we want to retrieve? Just in general, not talking about like the criteria yet. The criteria are going to go into our where statement. But what are the columns from the table that we want back? What column or columns do we want back? Return what? Yes, exactly. What we want back is the product ID column, right? Product ID. But we want to restrict the product IDs that we get back to meet the criteria that we've specified. So now let's figure out because if I just ran this without the where clause, if I just ran this part of it, I would get back just a list of all the product IDs. I would get back everything in this first column here. So product ID and value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all I would get back. And so in fact, actually, let's do that. I just want to show you if we didn't put any criteria on this, let's visualize and see what we get back. So this will be a wrong answer, but I want to show you. No filter. Well, we're going to put a filter on it in just a minute. That's going to be our where statement. That's where we're going to put our filter criteria. But let's run it wide open just for now to see what we get back. So it's going to say this is wrong, but it is going to show us what the output is. All right, so output is a single column table with a header of product ID and values of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So a single column table with values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that's obviously wrong, right? That's not what it wanted. We need to filter those values down to only the ones with a yes value in the low fats and recyclable column. So that is where the where clause comes in. Where is a filter. All right, so let's figure out how to filter this. Yeah, exactly. Let's keep it simple for now, spaghetti. Yeah, we can do all sorts of, we could specify, column numbers and that kind of thing. But let's keep it super simple, super basic for now, so that folks don't get snowed under here at the very beginning. All right. Oh, I see what you're doing. You're hard coding the values that we want to get back. I see what you're doing. Yeah, I got you. Nice. I thought you were specifying column numbers, but no, I got you. All right, let's figure out our filters. And piece of shoot specified one there. Okay, so one of the filters that we need obviously is looking for values in the low fats column that have a value of y. Oh, thank you so much, Fat Cat with a Hat. I really appreciate this sub. That's so great. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I wanted to mention too. So as always, thank you all for the subs. Um, and that has really helped with my fostering efforts. So, I just want to tell you that that money is, any money that you do contribute. It stops Jeff Bezos from going to space, and it helps me buy extra formula and extra, supplies so I don't have to rely on the shelter for that. Especially litter, kitty litter. Oh my god, so much. It's not glamorous, but so much kitty litter. Kittens poop a lot. Sorry, they do. So much kitty litter. So yes, that is very helpful. Thank you all. Yeah. So I have to use for the kittens. I have to use paper litter. It's made out of newspaper, because they will eat they'll eat regular litter. It's not good for them. They'll just put it. It's like they're like babies. They just put it all in their mouths. And so I have to use like newspaper litter, which is more expensive than regular litter. So no, you're under no obligation to sub. It's more than enough. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it, and it's going to a good cause. So thank you. Okay. Anyway, let's think about our filters here. So, piece of shoot said 1. So we need to do something with the low fats column, right? Low fats. And what we're doing is we're checking to see where low fats equals yes, right? So any row that matches this criteria. So by default, SQL is going to look through every single row in the table that we've specified. It's going to go down each row and it's going to check the criteria. And so just like in JavaScript, where we can in a loop where we would check for a certain condition, where we would say, hey, does something equal something else? That's what we would do here. Um, and so what we're doing here is we're checking to see if low fats equals yes, then that is one of the values that's going to be returned. However, that's not the only thing that we need to specify, right? We also need to specify whether the recyclable column was yes as well. So we can specify multiple criteria in our where clause, in our filter here. All we need to do in order to do that is literally type the word and. So you don't got to use any fancy symbols. We ain't doing no, and there, like ampersand, ampersand. Nah. SQL is not a fancy language like that. You just type the word and. Because it's a language from the 70s and things were simpler back then, and so that's what you do. All right, so any guesses on what my second criteria should be? What should the second part of this criteria be? We did low fats equals y, so what is the second part? I'll let you all fill that in. SQL ain't got time for that. Absolutely, it's a 70s language, man. It's chill, it's mellow. We're not doing any of those fancy symbols or nothing. We're old school in SQL. Recyclable, yep. We're going to be using the recyclable column. Now, what do we say here? Yeah, recyclable equals y. Exactly. That was fairly straightforward, right? That was fairly straightforward. It's more accessible. Exactly. That's the secret of SQL. It's very easy to pick up the basics, and I would highly recommend it for anyone. For anyone. Learning the very basics of how to write a SQL query is so easy. Mastering it is hard, just like with anything. But if you just learn basic SQL, you'll be set most of the time. All right, let's run it. See if I did this right. All right, so select product ID from products where low fats equals yes and recyclable equals yes. Okay, let's run it. Hey, check it. So what we get back is essentially a single column table, just like this, with only the values that meet the criteria that we specified. Yeah. That looks like plain English, doesn't it? I told you. I told you that our pseudocode would end up matching pretty closely to the final product. And here we are. That's because SQL is written in a basic SQL queries are written in a very accessible way. Yeah. My query was shorter. Yes, what Spaghetti Developer is suggesting is that we literally just go in and retrieve the specific values that we already know are correct. Yes. I am shook. Yeah, it's not that bad, is it? So, all right, I'll put the question to you. Do you want to do another SQL question just to prove that this wasn't necessarily a fluke? Would you like to do another SQL question next? Okay, I'm seeing yes. All right, I'm feeling some momentum here. Yeah, an extra hard one. No, absolutely not. Okay, I have a few here that I looked at earlier just to kind of gauge them for accessibility. Let me think about this. Which one do we want to do? Yeah. Okay. Let's do. Yeah, I've got another one we can do here. It's not. And this one isn't. This one is just a little bit more. This is one is just a little bit more complex and will help us introduce some additional concepts to basic SQL queries. So let's do it. All right. Ba, ba, ba. So next we're going to do number 1741. Total time spent by each employee. All right. Zena asks, are there a plethora of words besides select, from, where, and? Yes, there are, and we're going to see a couple more of them. We're going to see a couple more keywords in this next solution that we're going to do. However, after we finish the solution, you'll have many of the keywords that you would use in everyday queries. There's not many more that you would need in basic queries. We aren't going to do any joins here. Those are a little bit more advanced, but I would say the only missing piece beyond the keywords that we're going to see here today is the concept of joins. And if you watch my SQL stream, my intro to SQL stream from a few months ago, I do go into some detail about joins and join types. That's really the other major concept for basic SQL. But yeah, I mean, there's a limited set of keywords. Like I say, it's a 70s language. Computers hadn't existed for very long when this language was created, so it's the keywords are fairly straightforward. All right. So for this one, what are we doing here? That's 70s language. What are we doing here? All right. It says find total time spent by each employee. So again, we are given a table of 4 columns. Now, keep in mind that this first description here, these are the column names. So it's a little misleading, but these are the columns that are going to go across horizontally in the table. It's just giving you the data types of each. So the thing about SQL is that when you are building a table, you do have to declare the type of each column. So the type of data that's going to be in each column. Unlike JavaScript, SQL absolutely does care about data types, such as integers, characters, dates, that kind of thing. It's fairly strict like that. So they give us the data types of each column, and they give us a primary key here of employee ID, day, and time are all what work together in order to create unique values in the table. Don't got to worry about that too much. It's okay. The table shows the employee's entries and exits in an office. Event day is the day at which this event happened. All right, so this column, event day, is the day when it happens, so it's a date. In time is the minute at which the employee entered the office, and out time is when they left. Okay, in and out time are between 1 and 1440. Okay, whatever. No 2 events in the same day intersect in time, so it's not possible for an employee to have checked in and out of the office at the same time. Not going to happen. And in time is always less than out time. So when they go into the office, it's always before when they leave. All right. So what do they want? Run a SQL query. Excuse me. I can take a drink real quick. Sorry. Write a SQL query to calculate the total time in minutes spent by each employee on each day at the office. Note that within one day, an employee can enter and leave more than once. The time spent in the office for a single entry is out time minus in time. So they're telling us how to calculate the time spent in the office. They're giving us this information. We're going to be subtracting the out time value from the in time value in each row. Return the result table in any order. The query result format is in the following example. Now, it says return it in any order, but I think when I was messing with this earlier, it does care. So we're gonna ignore this part, but we're gonna make it match. Okay, so here's our input table. We can see it has the 4 columns that we talked about. And in time and out time is what we've been given here. And we can see, so employee 1 right here, they went in and out of the office more than once on the same day. So we're going to have to consider that when we're calculating the time that they spent in the office, right? It's not just this. It's 32 minus 4 plus 200 minus 55 for this employee on this day. Now, the calculation on the second day is separate, right? And we'll see that here down in the result. So in the result, we can see that on the 28th, employee 1, the total sum of these 2 rows here, time spent in office, is 173. And then on the next day, this calculation is separate because it is on the next day. So what they want out is a list of the days and then the time spent by each employee on that day. Okay. This looks harder than it is. This looks harder than it is, I promise. All right. Let's break it down. It'll be easier when we break it down and we think about what we need to do. You think you can do it now? Okay, awesome. Yeah, and there SQL can be as complex as you want it to be. However, I want to be very clear that basic SQL is really just the same few keywords over and over again. Most people are not going to be DBAs. Most people are not going to be running, administering a database for your employer. Most of the time, what you're going to be doing, if you do SQL at all, is basic queries on tables, maybe a few joins here and there, just to fetch data more quickly. And so you're going to need a limited set for the at the basic level. It looks like the days aren't necessarily in order too. Yeah, they aren't necessarily in order. But the nice thing is that SQL can recognize this and group these values together. However, but let's think about what these values signify in this particular case, though. So in this case, these 1128 values are for different employees, right? So this is for employee 1 and this is for employee 2. So we need to think about the breakdown. Let's start thinking this out a little bit. So we're going to build our basic shell here. Select. We're going to select some stuff from a table. Okay. And in some point in this inside of this stuff, we're going to be doing the calculation of out time minus in time for each employee on each day. But we'll get there when we get there. And we're going to add a new clause here, and I'll explain what this is when we get there. Group by. Group by. This is another keyword. Stuff. And then the last thing we're going to do is an order by as well. Order by stuff. Okay, that's all we're going to need for this. I promise. That's all we're going to need. All right. No, you're good, Dan. You're good, Dan. It's all good. It takes a little while to look at these things and to kind of visualize what the data looks like, which is why I'm sharing it with you, because this stuff kind of takes a little while to percolate and think about. So you might not get it right away, but it's good to know how to look at a table and visualize how to get what you want out of it. All right. Fat Cat says, is SQL always in Markdown? Um, how do you mean Markdown? Can you, I'm not sure I understand the question. Spaghetti says, I get paid junior wage to do insane 200 plus line queries. Yeah, you're getting ripped off, Spaghetti. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, but hey, never a bad time to look for a new job, right? Yeah, you shouldn't be doing. You should be at least at the senior level if you're doing advanced stuff. Um, yes, I'm a senior. I'm a senior SQL dev. I'm just sort of doing an introduction to SQL here for people that have never used it before. So we're doing just some basic questions and talking about the elements that make up a SQL query. All right, so let's prep this out. So our inputs here. Our inputs are a table with employee ID, day, in time, and out time. Employees may leave and return on the same day, meaning that the same employee could have multiple, can't spell, multiple rows for the same day. So when we have multiple rows with the same information and we want to condense those multiple rows down into one. So for example, here, essentially in the output, we want these two rows to be reduced to a single row for that day and that employee. That is where our friend, the group by keyword, comes in handy. It's literally, it does what it says on the tin. It groups stuff using the conditions that we specify. So we'll get there in a minute, but I wanted to tell you that's what that keyword is for. When it says group, it means group. We're going to be grouping stuff together. All right. So the result that they want is one row per employee per day. One row per employee per day with a new column called total time, showing the total time spent in the office, calculated by, essentially they told us how to calculate it, taking the out time minus the in time. Okay, and they gave us an example here, so we'll let that ride. So talking about this in terms of pseudocode. Okay. Saywan says, my first language was SQL back in 2018. Yeah, I think, when did I start learning SQL? It was around, mine was around 2016, 2017, but pretty close to then. Yeah. Okay, so pseudocode. Let's think about how let's talk this out. All right. Well, so at the very least, I know I'm going to need the day in the employee ID, right? Select the day and the employee ID from the employees table, right? Select the yeah, we'll get there, Spaghetti. Once we start putting in our select statement, we will need one more keyword. You're right. But overall, like, this is the overarching, the main keywords that we're going to need. So we're going to select the day and the employee ID from the employees table. And then what we're going to want to do is group the rows together so that there is only one row per employee per day, and sum the total time total time in the office for each employee per day, returning it as a new column called total time. Okay, so this is what we sent, this is what we put in, this is what we get out. And if we look at, for example, employee 2 here on the 28th, we can see that they took the 33, subtracted the 3, or sorry, took the 33, subtracted the 3, and so the result in the total time column is 30. All right, let's see how we do that. No worries, Fat Cat. Have a good day. All right, so how do we do this? Well, in our pseudocode, we said we wanted to select the day and the employee ID from the employees table. Okay, we know how to do that, right? We can say select event day. So we'll start with that. Select event day. And we're also going to select the employee ID, emp ID. Okay. And notice that I'm putting them in a certain order because that's the order that the output wants. Whatever order I put my select statement in, that is the order that the output will generate. Okay, event day, emp ID, and then we're also going to have a new column called total time, which we're going to calculate as we go. We can calculate things within queries too, and they told us how to calculate that. So for now, I'm just going to put in what they told us to do. So out time minus in time. Now I'm going to introduce one more keyword, which Spaghetti Developer was alluding to earlier, and that is the as keyword. So select whatever the out time minus the in time is as total time. So essentially, I'm just saying, hey, do this calculation and then return it as a new column in the output called total time. Yes, absolutely, Zena. You're exactly right. Yep. Is that how you create a new field? That is how you create a new field, or how you can rename an existing field. Now, notice in the output, they specify that the event day column actually needs to be renamed to day. We can do the same thing up here to say event day as day, and that will just rename the column for us. It's called aliasing. We can alias that column. Event day as day. It doesn't change what's in there at all. It just gives it a different name. Gives it a different name in the column header. Event day as day. Employee ID. We're going to do a calculation in here. We're going to come back. We're going to refine that calculation a little bit to make sure it's correct. But for now, just know we're going to have 3 columns here. Event day is going to be renamed to day. The employee ID. And this new column we're going to calculate, which is going to be called total time. With me so far? All right. As does not affect the name of the original table. That is correct. So if you think about it in terms of CRUD operations, so we talk about CRUD, create, read, update, delete. We've all done, we've all worked with MongoDB at this point. You've read things from your database. When you do a read from your database, you aren't changing what's in the database, right? You're just grabbing values from it so you can use those values elsewhere. And so that's literally all we're doing here. That is what a select statement is doing. It's not modifying the original values. It's just reading them. It's just fetching them. And so we can do other things to them without hurting the original data. Now, there are ways that you can do other CRUD operations. You can update data, you can delete data, you can create data in a database, but those use a different keyword. So for the select keyword here, we are doing a read operation only. Feels like a save as vibe. It kind of is. Yeah. So we're returning a brand new table that is separate from the original and modified in whatever way we would like. Now that table won't be permanent. It's like it's temporary. It only exists for as long as the query is, as long as your session is active. You can, you could obviously dump that data into a new table, but it's like a temporary snapshot of only the data that you want. Makes sense so far? Oh, good. Okay. Yep. It renames it in your local output. Exactly. We are renaming this in our local output without hurting the original data. Yeah, and we don't even actually need the as keyword here. We could take the as keyword out and SQL would understand what we're trying to do. However, for clarity, I'm definitely using the as keyword because when you start taking it out, it gets, it gets really hard to follow if you're not familiar with looking at this. So I'm deliberately using the as keyword to clearly specify we are renaming this column in this instance. We are giving it an alias of day. All right, so, and we're leaving emp ID alone because that stays the same name. We are changing the order. So if I select these things in this order, that is the order that they will appear in the output. And so day comes first, emp ID comes second, total time comes third. Now, we're getting this data from the employees table, right? Okay. Now, looking at group by. So remember, we said that group by literally groups rows together with the criteria that you specify. So looking at this output here, what they say they want from us is the time in minutes spent by each employee. So it tells me that they want one row per employee per day. One row per employee per day. Okay. And then looking at the output, we can see that we're definitely grouping by the day, right? We're collapsing by the day and then also by the employee. So if employee 1 has 2 rows on the first day, those rows will be grouped together into one. However, we don't want to smush both employees together. We don't want to get rid of employee 1 and employee 2. We want them to stay separate. We want them to stay as 2 separate rows. So I'm going to group by 2 things here. I'm going to group by event day and emp ID. And what that's going to do is SQL is going to go down the table and it's going to say, oh, okay, you said group by day, so I can collapse these down. And you also said group by employee ID. So this employee has 2 rows on the same day with the same ID. So I'm going to take those rows and I'm going to scrunch them down into a single row. Does that make sense? What we're trying to accomplish here by saying group by? So if employee 1 had 3 rows on the same day, it would smush them down to 1. If employee ID 1 had 5 rows on the same day, it would smush them down to 1 because that's what we told it to group by, day and ID. So it's using those as kind of collection points to decide how far down to collapse the data. When is it going to do the addition? So we are going to do the addition is going to happen here. We're going to do that last. So we do need to do some kind of calculation here, right? But yes, we're going to be grouping the rows. And the last thing we're going to do here is we're also going to order the rows in a certain way. So we can sort. SQL allows us to sort our results in the output. So clearly here, the output is in the order of days, right? It's showing us the 28th first, followed by December 3rd, followed by December 9th. So we're going to order by event day to sort it. Order is just literally means sort. Sort by event day. And it looks like the employee ID is also in numerical order as well, right? 1 always comes before 2 in the output. So we're going to order by employee ID as well. Okay. And Twisted Tech asking a really, really, really good question there. Does the order of your group by matter? What if you grouped by employee ID, then event day? So yes, it does matter what order you group by. And so let's hold that thought for a second, and let's play with it both ways. We'll change the we'll do a little demo of that in change the group order to see what happens. All right. Now, the last thing we want to do here is our actual calculation of the time. So we know that for each row, essentially, we want to figure the total time by taking the out time minus the in time. However, when we group those rows together, we want to make sure that our total time values for each row are also added together. So when the grouping happens, we want to make sure that this 28 is added to this, what is that, whatever this is, whatever 200 minus 55 is. We want to make sure that 28 plus whatever the result of this is, those things are added together and then shown on this single row. So all we need to do in order to make that happen is to just say sum, just sum. Just basically says, hey, when you group these things together, if you're smushing together rows, please add together all of these values and output them as this new column. So for each grouping, add together all the rows that you're grouping together and display the result as this new total time column. Okay. So let's run it and see what we get. And I think we've got everything there. Total time. Oh, I have my order buys in the wrong order. Yeah. It's correct. My order by is in the wrong order though. Whoops. Order by should be employee ID and event day. But maybe it doesn't matter in this case. I think it still works because there's so few rows. What if you sum but don't group in the end? We can try it. Let's do all these things. Yeah, I think there's so few rows here that the order by really doesn't matter. I thought it did. I thought it gave me an error the first time I did it the other way, but I'm going to do it without an order by clause. Maybe we don't even need it. Let's see what happens. I guess it said it doesn't care, so yeah. Okay. So the output that we get is essentially this, but let's play around with some of the groupings too. Let's put emp ID first and see if that matters here. Because yes, the order, when you have larger tables with more rows, the group by absolutely does matter because that tells you the order in which your data is going to be aggregated. Okay, it still works. There's too few rows in this in this table, but the group by order absolutely does matter. If you had lots of different employees with lots of different entries, that could make a difference depending on how you're aggregating your data together. All right, so but let's try. All right, so somebody asked. Yeah, in this case, it doesn't matter. It's too the table was too small. So the question was, what if you sum but don't group in the end? All right, let's do that. Take that off. See what we get. Uh-oh. Yeah, so let's see what we get. Our output here, yeah. So what's happening here is it's collapsed everything down into a single row. So we can see our header here is day and by d in total time, and we are given one row because we told SQL to just sum everything together. So sum everything together. Because we didn't specify any specific groupings, SQL is like, all right, cool. I'm going to collapse everything down to one row, and you're going to lose all your data. Right? SQL's like, nope. You wanted me to sum it? I sure as hell am going to sum it, and you're going to lose you're going to lose everything. It's going to be the sum is going to be correct. It's going to go through all the rows, and it's going to say, all right, row 1 plus row 2 plus row 3 plus row 4. And it's like, all right, I'm going to give you one output. Now, you have to specify that group by clause to essentially say, hey, SQL, actually, I want you to subdivide the data in a specific way and only sum to this level, only sum to the employee ID and event and day level. Don't go any lower than that because otherwise we lose the fidelity of our data. So we'll run it again. Yeah. And now it's correct because we told SQL the correct level of aggregation that we want. Not too low, not too high. We specified it ourselves. Hotdent says, imagine doing the mistake in a DB with a million rows. Well, the good thing is, since we're doing a select statement here, it's really no big deal because we are not damaging the original database in any way. We are selecting, we're doing a query, it's okay. We can always fix the query and run it again. So again, that's the nice thing about select statements is that they are reading data. They are not writing or damaging the original database in any way. Does my solution count if I 40% copy from? No, it's fine. Yeah, that's valid. I'm sure you learned something, right? I mean, the time it will actually SQL is very efficient. So I'll give you an example. So today I was trying to solve. I was trying to check whether some work I'd done was correct, and so I went to a table that had. This is actually a fairly small table for the kind of thing that I work with. It had 2.7 million rows, or was it 2.2? I don't know. Over 2 million rows, and I just wanted to see how many rows are in this table. And so essentially what I did was I said, hey, SQL, please count the rows in this table and just give me the number. Count every single row in the table and return back to me just literally the count of rows in the table. So it's very similar to just doing a sum. It's just a different operation. And it took like 3 seconds. I mean, maybe not even that. So those types of SQL is pretty good at what it does. The more like sub calculations and things you have, the harder it can get. But SQL was built for this, and so it's pretty efficient at what it does. And there's lots of optimizations that you can do, but that's beyond the level of basic SQL. So yeah, it's a pretty purpose built language, and so it's pretty good at what it does. So as day is basically setting a type for the return value of event date. It's not a type, it's a name. It's like in Minecraft, I don't know if does anybody play Minecraft? So in Minecraft, you can take like a sheep or something and you can have a label. You can have like a label and you can put a name on that label and you can like attach it to the sheep. It's literally that. The sheep does not change. The sheep is still a sheep. It's just now named Craig. You've just given it a name, which really doesn't, it doesn't change the nature of the sheep. The sheep is just now named Craig. And so that's what we're doing here. We're renaming this. We're giving it an alias so that in the output, it is now called day. It just gives it a new shiny name. Yeah, yeah. You're just naming the sheep Craig. You're not changing it into a pig or anything like that. I suck at Minecraft. You would not want to watch me stream Minecraft. I like it, but I suck. All right. So these are just some good keywords to know. Remember, we have the as keyword, which allows us to rename things in our output. We have our group by, which essentially tells SQL what level to aggregate to. So if we just had this sum here without the group by, SQL would just be like, all right, I can sum for you. I'm really good at summing things. And it would just collapse everything down to a single row. But we're telling SQL specifically to, hey, SQL, stop summing when you get to the employee ID and event day level, and give me rows just aggregated at that level. So SQL is very good at, just like with any language, SQL is very good at doing what you tell it. So you just need to know what you want to tell it. Okay. How could we see the output in a table? So Rascal was saying that there's a beta version of LeetCode out there that does allow you to see things in tables. That would make things easier. I don't know, Rascal, how do you get to the beta version of LeetCode that allows you to see tables? You have to sign up for it or something? Oh, a blue new button behind my cam. Let me make this window smaller. My Steam was open behind. Uh, where am I missing? Am I missing a button here? Yeah, it's not there for me. Rascal's just too too OP for got access to all the special features. Yeah, I apparently I don't have access to that. Um, A/B testing the site. Yeah. But yeah, in the end, what we get out of this is it is hard to see. I know. Um, Day, employee ID, and total time, and then the values grouped together, just the same way they are in the example. Yeah. Okay. So any more questions on this one? On any of these keywords or types of things that you can do um, in SQL? Questions about capabilities, um, how SQL does what it does. I'm happy to answer those questions, or we can just do another problem. It's up to you. So what I would suggest is that you should probably, whether you do it on LeetCode or Code Wars, maybe try a few simple SQL problems. Even if you have to Google for the answers, that's totally fine. Just get to the point where you can look at what the problem is asking for and write a select statement with at least the right columns in it. Um, and at least so you can get to the point where you can identify the columns, where they come from, and then what type of calculation you might need to do, if any, on those columns to get the result. So what do y'all want to do next? Do you want to do another JavaScript question or another SQL question? It's up to you. I'll let you decide. I have both. Okay, we got one vote for JavaScript. I'm agnostic either one. One vote for SQL. Uh-oh. JS. One job, please. All right, I'm seeing a desire for JS here. A LeetCode, yeah. So the question is, do we do another LeetCode in JavaScript or another one in SQL? It's totally up to you. Munster asked for joins in SQL. I think those might be a little bit too advanced for this stream right now, but I do have a past stream on my YouTube channel, so !YouTube, where I go into a lot of detail about joins, the different types of joins, and we practice doing basic joins in SQL. So I did have a stream a few months ago that was exclusively devoted to introducing SQL. So exclamation point YouTube for that if you would like to learn more about joins. No space here. I'll help you pull it up there. There you go. There's a link to my channel. All right. So let's do. We're gonna do one more problem before we wrap up for the evening. Let's do a JavaScript problem. It's kind of the consensus that I'm seeing here. So I've got a few here that I'm looking at. Um, no worries at all, Mendioni. Okay, there's one that I want to do that's kind of fun. We might have time to do two. The couple that I'm looking at are kind of short, so we'll see. All right, let's look at number 1689. This is a medium JavaScript. Oh no, we can do it though, and it's math, which is scary. All right. So partitioning into minimum number of deci-binary numbers. Oh boy, big words. Okay, a decimal number is called deci-binary is if each of its digits is either 0 or 1 without any leading zeros. For example, 101 and 111 are deci-binary, while 112 and 3001 are not. Okay, so essentially any number that has like starts with a 1 and only contains zeros and ones. Give a string n, given a string n that represents a positive decimal integer, return the minimum number of positive deci-binary numbers needed so that they sum up to n. Yikes. Okay. So in this case, the input is a string of 32, and the output is 3 because the minimum number of positive deci-binary numbers needed to add up to it is 3. So 10 plus 11 plus 11 is 32. Okay, and then here's another much larger input that they give us. So 82734, the output there is 8. 8 deci-binary numbers is the minimum needed, not the maximum, but the minimum needed to add up to this number. And then this last one, which is very long, massive number. Anyway, it takes 9 deci-binary numbers at minimum to add up to this input. Okay. Oh, and I have the solution in here already. I was testing various things. Dang it, you didn't see that. Oh no. I forgot I left it in there. Shh. You saw nothing. All right. Let's talk through it though. I think it's worth talking through. Yeah, previous code. Reset to default. Y'all didn't see it though. Okay. So this feels almost like kind of like a trick question, but it really isn't, which is kind of why I chose it because it's, yeah, I was too busy getting lost in the sauce of the wording. Exactly. Because it's like with a lot of these LeetCode questions, it's so like the wording is so, I don't know, unnecessarily complicated. So let's see if we can figure it out. So parameters are they're going to give us a, so what are they giving us? What is our input value into this function? Specifically, what are they giving us? I'm not going to do this one for you. I did the SQL one, but yeah, exactly. So they're giving us a integer. Important. All right. So parameters is a string representing an integer. It's what's our output supposed to be? What is our output supposed to be? I'm going to hydrate here. What do they want back? A number. Yep. Okay. So they're giving us a string representing a number, and then what they want back is a number which represents the minimum number of positive deci-binary numbers needed to add up to the input value, right? Number represents the minimum number of positive deci-binary numbers needed to add up to the input value. Okay, and then some examples that they gave us here. Input 32, output 3. And input a bunch of big number, output 8. And then finally, a really gigantic number, output 9. Okay, so pseudocode. Oh boy. So in order to come up with some pseudocode for this, we're going to need to think about what is actually being asked. So the definition of deci-binary numbers is kind of important here. They tell us specifically that a deci-binary number is always going to start with a 1 and never a leading 0, and it will only contain 1s and 0s within it. So if we think about an example, let's say that our input that they gave us, let's say our input that they gave us was 400. If I am constrained to numbers that begin with a 1 and have no leading zeros, what is the how could I add up to 400 with the fewest numbers possible? What could I do to get to 400 if I'm limited to only numbers that start with 1 and have no leading zeros? What is the minimum number? How could I do this in the minimum number of numbers? Yeah, I could do this. I could say, right? I could do 100 4 times, and that would add it to 400, right? Okay, let's look at another one. Let's think about 34. Let's think about 34. So I could do something similar here, using deci-binary numbers. I would have to do something like, well, let's see, 11 is deci-binary, right? 11, 11, 11, but that gets me to 33. And so I really then just need a 1 at the end. So 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 1 is 34. All of those numbers are deci-binary, so that works. Now, how many numbers was that? Again, it was 4. Now, if we think about something like 35, is that behind my head? I want to make sure that I'm visible. Yeah, I am. Okay. Um, think about something like 35. Again, we could do something like 11, 11, 11. And then in order to make the 35, I would need 1 and 1. So how many numbers is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So do we see a commonality here between the number of decibinary numbers that we need in order to reach our total and the value, the original value that we've started with? Does anybody see the commonality here? And we can look at these examples up here too. So 32 takes 3 numbers, 82734 takes 8, and this giant number here takes 9. What's the common factor? We don't necessarily need to do the math here, right? Yeah, right, exactly. In order to get, as Spaghetti and Piece of Shoot say, in order to get the minimum decibinary, you'll need the maximum unit of that number, because that's how many ones, that's how many one values you would need in order to build that part of the number, right? For 82734, I'm going to need at least 8. I'm going to need at least 8 10,000 decibinary numbers. Does that make sense? So our approach here is going to need to be something like identify the largest digit of the input value. Identify the largest digit of the input value and return that value and return that digit only. Digit. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So Piece of Sheet brought up a good example there too. So another one here, if you're still not getting it, how many decibinary numbers do we need to make the number 9? Well, decibinary numbers can only contain ones and zeros and can't have leading zeros or anything. So we're just going to have to do 1 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? In order to make 9, because that's the only decibinary digit we can use at that level. Yeah. Exactamundo. Okay, so this is what we need to do. Identify the largest digit of the input value. So we know why we need to do it. Now let's think about how. How can we do this? I'm going to get rid of this old var notation here because I don't like it. Remember that they're giving us a string as our input. So what's a way that we can very quickly break this input value apart and identify the maximum? Anybody have any ideas? We know our string methods pretty well, right? We know how to work with strings. So how can we do that? Yeah, we're going to have to do some kind of a split, right? Because what we're going to need to do first is break that string apart into an array. And so then we can perform then we can actually do mathematical operations on that array, on the individual elements in that array. So let's do, let me think about how to do this. So function, let's see. I don't necessarily want to do this as I don't know if I want to do console logs, but okay, let's do it this way. So I'm going to need to do some kind of a split, right? So I'm going to need to do our input value is n.split. And I want to split, what am I splitting on here? To break this apart into an array of individual values. I want to take each number in the string. Yep, it's just going to be an empty split like that. All right. And so once I've done that, once I've broken it out into its individual components, then what do I want to do to this? So I break it out into its individual components. How do I identify the maximum? How can I find the maximum value in an array? Because when I do this split, I'm turning it into an array. How do I identify the maximum value? Turn it into nums? Well, fortunately, JavaScript is smart, or I don't know, some might disagree, but JavaScript is either smart enough or stupid enough to understand that if you have a number stored as a string, it can interpret it as a number. Smorth. Yeah, it's smort. And so, yeah, we can do a math.max on this. But what we need to do first is, as somebody said earlier, math.max will work. But what we need to do is make sure that we are able to read from the whole array. So we can do math.max and then spread the array out so that math.max is able to look at the entire array, each element in it, like essentially look through the entire array. We're spreading it out so math.max doesn't treat this as a single element in an array. We're spreading it out so each digit in the number gets its own slot in the array, and then math.max will look through each value and find the maximum. So I need to enclose this in a function. We're just going to call it, what did they call this? What's the function name? I lost the function name. Whoops. I can look here. Min partition. All right. All right. So I can say min partitions. We take in n. I'm going to do arrow functions here because I like a one-liner occasionally. All right. So our function here is going to split this apart, spread it out so that each digit gets its own slot in the array, and then find the maximum value and return it. Brashless says it works with just spread operator n as well. Okay, let's do that. Even simpler. Ooh, I like it. Nice. Yeah. So we didn't even have to split it out. Very good. Okay, rad. Let's run it. Hey, nice. Let's do another test case. Let's do this one here, this big one. Or no, this really big one. Oops. Okay. Yay. All right. Very nice. So this ended up being just like really a single step solution. So with all this, confusing, nasty wording here, it ended up being just this, which is kind of wild if you think about it. All right. When the function name is longer than the guts of the function, I know. That's kind of why I did it as a one-liner too, because I was thinking like, wow, this is so small, it's so tiny. It's so I know it's so verbose, like teaching us the word decibinary and all that nonsense, all that disrespect. Absolutely. For such a very simple little solution. And I think that's, I think the clues here. So this one, I'm going to be real. When I first looked at this one, I was like, what the heck? And I kept doing, like, I had to keep doing, making my own examples, just like I did here. So like, I literally did what, what I just did for you a few minutes ago, where I took like some numbers and I was like, okay, 40. All right, what is, okay, 10, 10, 10, 10. And then like, I did all of that. I wrote it out just because I was not, picking up what the problem was putting down. And so that's in like in an interview, that's the kind of thing you could do. You could say like, okay, well, so let's say that you gave me 40. So thinking about how that would work, and you could kind of talk it through. Okay, so 10, 10, 10, 10. All right, so then the expected answer would be 4, right? The output would be 4, and they'd be like, yes, that's correct. And so you can kind of talk that through and think about it. Um, Doing this iteratively would be maddening. Yeah, and I really think if you get to this point here, like the numbers like this, they tell us that the length could be up to 10 to the 5. And so I think it would just become impossible. Yeah, you get to the point where you're just like, nope. And I knew there had to be some kind of a catch, because they said specifically that they're giving it like a string. And I was like, okay, why is it a string? There's gotta be, there's something going on here. So there has to be a catch. Yeah. Great example of how writing down all the steps and reasoning through it reveals the answer. Yes. And that's why we talk about the prep method so much. So if you're in an interview, it could be really tempting to just be like, ooh, okay, they given me a question. I got to solve it. I'm just going to jump in, right? I'm just going to start. Oh, I think I can do this with a for loop. I'm just going to jump in and start coding the for loop, without really thinking through all the possibilities of what could be done, and what the patterns might be. Um, Piece of Shoot says that's how you find series when you start with calculus. Then you start to see the patterns everywhere. Beautiful mind style. Yeah, I feel like if I had learned math thinking about problems in more of this way, and more of this logical sort of like inputs, outputs, examples, talking through the solution, I really think I probably would have done better in math in school. Because in school they tell you a bunch of theory, and then they're like, okay, do a bunch of these problems, and you're given like 30 problems for homework, and so you just try to solve them as quickly as you can without thinking about why or how these things work. Um, so yeah, I really like this approach: parameters, result, examples, and pseudocode, because it forces you to think about, okay, what is this problem really wanting me to do? Um, I could see myself failing a button test by doing something super complex. Yeah, yeah. So as long as you prep, you should be okay. But all right, let me see. Oh, okay. Let's do one more. I think we've got one. We've got time for one more. Because it's fairly straightforward. It uses something we already know. Um, and I don't know. I just kind of like this one. So let's just has us maybe think about a method that we already know, in a slightly more in-depth way. So let's do one more. All right, any last questions on this one? Why this works or anything like that? It was more, in this case, it was more about just plowing through all the nonsense and getting to what it was actually asking, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, feel free to ask if you have any more questions, but we're going to go on to the next one here. Next one we're going to do, last one we're going to do here is 1480. Uh, Running sum of 1D array. Yeah. Okay, so what is this asking for? A lot more straightforward than the other one we just looked at. No big words. Good night, Wolven. Woo. Ending with Allie. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome. Hello. I hope everybody's having a good day today. Hi, readers. Yes. So we are slamming out one last LeetCode problem here before we wrap up for the evening. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Allie. Well, I hope you can have a little bit of good times here uh, doing a LeetCode problem with us. So we're going to be doing one more LeetCode problem here, and then I'm going to wrap up as well. Welcome, 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 everybody. So for this one here, fairly straightforward, like I said. We have been given an array of nums, and we want to return a running sum of nums. Running sum of nums. Okay, so our input is 1, 2, 3, 4, and our output is 1, 3, 6, 10. So what they want here is we're taking in an array and we're returning an array, but the contents of that array should be a running total as we go through the array. So for example, in this one, the first value in the return array should be 1, because 1 and there's nothing to add it to. The next value should be 2 plus 1, and then the next value should be 3 plus 2 plus 1. The last value should be 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. You get the idea. Is your sum running? Better catch it. Yeah. And then the next one here, we've taken an array of all ones. And then so, obviously that becomes 1, 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. All right. And then I think you can see where this is going. The last one here, 3, and then 3 plus 1, and then 2 plus 1 plus 3, 10, 2, 1, 3. Yeah, okay. You get it. All right, so again, I'm going to get rid of this var notation here. So let's think about this. Our parameters here, what are we taking in? There's really, this one that is pretty, in and out is pretty straightforward. What are we taking in? What's our in value? Result, I cannot spell, my goodness. Results. Code. I don't think I've misspelled pseudocode yet, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, we're taking in an array, right? All right. An array of, it's array of integers, right? Integers. Okay. I think they gave us some conditions down here. Yeah, so num length is going to be between 1 and 1,000. Okay. And the index, the length of the array is limited as well. Or sorry, the length of the array is between 1 and 1,000, and the nums are going to be, between some absurdly large number. So an array of integers, okay. And what do they want back? What is the output here? What do we get back? An array of sums, yeah. So it's going to be an array, right, of integers with each array value representing the running total, the running sum of all previous values, right? And I guess I should say an array of integers of the same length. Yeah. Because we want it to match the length and just be a running sum at that point. Okay, and they gave us some examples here. I'll just drop that in there. I'm not going to put them all, but because I think this one we kind of can tell what's going on here. Okay. And so what would be a way that we could possibly approach this? What do we know about arrays that allows us to keep track of a running total of some kind? How do we know? What do we know about? How do we know that we can keep track of that we can sort of go throughout an array and sum it up and easily do that using some kind of built-in method? We should know the method that we need to use here, or that we want to use. We might not know how to implement it, but yeah, we can use reduce. We could use reduce because we know that what reduce does for us is it can essentially give us like keep track of like an aggregator value, right? We can, as we go through the array, we can keep track of an aggregator value, and by default, reduce is going to go through each value in the array and aggregate it however we tell it to. Yeah, reduce. I like the enthusiasm, Narla. Reduce the accumulator. Yeah, it's the accumulator. Nice. All right. So for our pseudocode here, we can say use the reduce method to what do we want to do here? Essentially, we want to take each value in the array and add it to the previous value, then return the result. So what we kind of want to do here, I think, is modify the original array, right? We're gonna go through that array and modify it so that each value in that array becomes the sum of itself and the previous value, right? So if we use reduce, what we can do here is we can say, okay, reduce, start going through this array right here. So reduce starts at 1. There's no previous value to add it to, so it leaves that as 1. However, it gets to this value and it sees the previous value and it adds it to the 2. And so the new value at this index here becomes 3. And same here. We say, all right, we're at 3. Previous value is 3 now because it's been modified. We add them together. New value is 6. And then 4 plus 6 is 10. And then that's what gets returned. So how do we do that? Because I think normally when we talk about reduce, we normally talk about reduce in the context of like taking an array and then returning a single value, right? I think that's, I don't know, excuse me. I don't know about you, but that's, I feel like how most people use reduce is that you go through an array and you end up with like a single value at the end. And I'll admit that's how I originally was trying to solve this problem. And I was like, reduce, I know reduce should work. Why isn't it working? Because I was kept trying to return a single value when that's not what the problem is asking for. So we want to return, a sum, but we want to keep track at each point in the array of what that sum is at that point. So for each index, we want to keep track of the running total at that point. So let's think about how we can do that. Let's do another arrow function here. Const, what do we, I keep losing track of what the function is supposed to be called. Running sum, all right. Running sum, and then our input value is called nums, right? Yes, okay. All right, so somehow we want to do a reduce here. Nums.reduce. Now, how reduce works is it takes in like just the general syntax of reduce is it takes in a few different. It can take in a few different parameters, right? So normally we might just use like the current index value or something like that, but there's actually several other parameters that reduce has. So real quick, let's just go over to the MDN. Reduce. I already looked at this earlier. Let's look at the MDN really quickly and look at the syntax for reduce. So reduce can have multiple parameters here. So we can have previous value, current index, and array. So for the purposes of solving this problem, what do we think we might be able to use here? What elements of this do you think we might be able to use? Do we see some things here that might come in handy? If we look at the full version of this. When we're talking about a running total, essentially what we're doing is we're looping through each index, right? And we're taking whatever the previous value was, and we are adding it to the value at the current point, right? So I think I can see a few of these coming in handy. So I'm just going to grab all of them. It won't hurt to have all of them. And then we'll see, let's see how to apply them. All right, previous value, current index array. Not saying we're going to use all these, but they're nice to have. So I always lose track of my parentheses whenever I do this. So, okay, so this is we're starting the arrow function here. So those are our parameters we're putting into our reduce. We start the arrow function. All right, and so what are we trying to do here? So at each array value, so I'm going to clean this up a little bit more here. All right, for each array value, we want to take whatever that value is at the current index and add it to the value at the previous index. So how I did this before, I'm looking at this and I think I might be able to do it a different way, but I'm going to do it the way I did before, and then we'll try it. We're going to try it a couple of different ways here. So essentially I can say, all right, this is the way I originally did it, but it might be kind of not the smartest way. I essentially said, all right, whatever the value is at the current index, take that, add it to the previous value. So in this case, for example, if we were at number 2 here, I would say 2 plus 1. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to reassign it. So we're going to reassign it to that value so it replaces the old value. And then, so that means that 2 becomes 3. And then, so when we go on to 3, we add it to the previous value, which is now 3. And so that becomes 6. And then when we go to 4, we add it to the previous value, which is now 6. And that becomes 10. Okay. And then, so now we've done all that reassignment and we return the result. So let's see if this works. I think it will. You'll notice that we didn't use the current value at all. We just used previous value, current index, and array. I think I may have had to do it this way actually, but let's run it. See if I forgot any parentheses. I always do. Nope. Okay, good. Nums is the array. That's correct. Yep. Nums is the array. But then within the reduce method, there's a specific parameter that we can specify with a new keyword, in this case, array. This is just signifying whatever array we're passing in. In this case, it's nums. Yeah. So this is equivalent to saying nums, and then whatever current index we are at, add that to the previous value and reassign it to the that current index. Okay. Now the other thing while I was just looking at this here, I was like, well, could we just do current value? But I don't know. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. The reason that we had to do it this way, was because we're doing reassignment here as well. Miss the closing parenthesis. Yeah, I always do that with reduce. This closed paren right here is so elusive. It just doesn't. Yeah, because your reduce usually ends up being so long, and then you forget the closed paren, and yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not the only one. So does it make sense what we're doing here? Why we did this? And I think you could probably also do it with like a loop, or like somebody said earlier, you could probably do it with map as well. Yeah. Oh, and Piece of Shoot looks like they did it with map as well. So they checked to see. Oh, okay. So yeah, essentially doing something similar. So checking to see if we start at index 0. If we're at index 0, then just return the first element. Else, take the previous element and add it to the running total. Yeah. Unindenting the return. Oh, yeah, of course. There we go. So that'll still work. It's not going to change anything. But yeah, I just really wanted to use reduce with this because I thought, because originally, like I said, originally I was trying to solve it because I thought I didn't pay attention. I dove into the problem too quickly. I didn't look at I didn't do my prep method. That was my bad. I didn't do the prep method and I just kept trying. I was like, reduce should work. I kept trying to return a single value and I was like, why am I getting this wrong? Because I wasn't paying attention. And so then when I finally figured out my problem and I looked at what the output was supposed to be, I thought, okay, there's got to be a way to make reduce still work in order to do this. And so this is coming up with this, means you have to use more of the elements of reduce than you might normally do. Um, yeah. So, but obviously, like with many things, there's a bunch of different possible ways you could solve this as well. For each or map or loops. Yeah. Really, any iterator you could use here and make it work. Rasha says this is a great example of side effects in functional programming. How so? Can you? I'm genuinely curious. Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by side effects? And any questions on this while they're typing up their answer? Because if not, then I think we're going to wrap up for the evening. This is a great time to end. Um, oh, we're discarding the return value of reduce, and yeah, yep, and that's exactly right. So we're using the reduce mechanism here in a slightly unintended way to do a reassignment inside of the reduce itself. We're not returning, we're not returning a new array. We're modifying the original so that we can continue to iterate through it and add to that running total while keeping track of the running total at each index. Yeah. Well, the reason that like I said, the reason I ended up using reduce for this problem, which is probably not the best way to do it, was just because that's what I was trying to, I was banging my head against it, trying to figure it out using reduce originally because I misread the problem. And then I was like, okay, there's got to be a way to still use reduce to solve it because I was too friggin' stubborn to abandon reduce at that point. So it was really just stubbornness. It wasn't anything clever. Yeah, no cleverness, just stubbornness, which is sometimes all you need in the end. Yeah, and I think math is probably much better. Yeah, anytime I see the word accumulation or running total or running sum or anything like that, I'm like, bang, reduce. So yeah, again, probably not the best, but it works. But yeah, something like map or something is I'm sure is better. Definitely. Okay, so any last questions before we wrap up? If not, then we'll probably find somebody to raid, spread the love a little bit, um, and then let's see. Do we have what today? Today is the last class tomorrow? Is the last 100 devs class tomorrow, or is that yes? Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, do we have another raid? What? Somebody just said raid. Oh, okay. Thank you, Kiri. Last official. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you all in class tomorrow. And then I think there's some kind of an after party on Tuesday, next Tuesday. So, but I will also see you this weekend, this Sunday. I apologize. I was unable to stream last Sunday. Um, I'll be real. I had been on call that week and I had gotten calls during the night 6 out of 7 days last week. And then I had my foster kittens too. So I was running on zero sleep and I was just like, nope, physically cannot stream last Sunday. So I've gotten the chance to rest up a little bit, feeling a little better. But yeah, I was up pretty much all night, every night that previous week, and it just was not working out for me. So yeah, but feeling much better now. I'm not on call anymore. My foster kittens are to the point where they can sleep through the night now without me having to feed them. So things are all better. It's all good. All right, I'm gonna pull up somebody to raid here. Let's do it. Give me 1 second. As always, if you have any suggestions on a raid target, please let me know. Well, thank you. I'm glad, I'm glad y'all are okay with that. I think one of the most important things for longevity in streaming is that you do take breaks and take care of yourself. I think that's, a lot of big streamers have made that mistake of not taking care of themselves until they burn out. And I'm not saying I'm a big streamer. I'm just saying that I've seen that happen with people, streamers before. So I do try to take breaks when I need them. So I appreciate that y'all are cool with it. All right, raid. Ooh, okay, we got a few suggestions here. Oh, we've got a birthday stream. Somebody's birthday. Okay, Quinn Sob, who Melody who? What's their handle? I don't know. I don't see them on my little list here. So it's not that I don't follow them. I think it's just not on my little. Um, Melody Dev. Yeah, I know I follow them, but they're not on my list. So of raid targets. So let's definitely give them a birthday raid. Give them some birthday love. Absolutely. They look like they're playing some kind of a game, so that should be fun. Um, Melody Dev. All right, I'm starting the raid now, and I will see you all in class tomorrow, and then this Sunday. Oh, last thing before we go. Please check my Twitter. I have a poll there, so I would appreciate if you vote in the poll to tell me your level of comfort with Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel and/or Microsoft Excel. So spreadsheet programs. Just please go vote in the poll. Exclamation point Twitter if you need my Twitter handle. Um, yeah, please go vote in the poll. That would really help me out quite a bit. Um, all right. I will see you all tomorrow, starting the raid. Good night, everybody. See ya.